How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be going over a bunch of tournament hands that I played last night. So, some background for this: it was a $10 buy-in with re-entries for the first two levels. Levels were 20 minutes, and there were 14 entrants, 3 rebuys. So, prize pool was $170, and only top 3 were paid out. I wanted to do top 4, but the vote ended up being for top 3. So before the tables combined, I kind of was just around 2,000 chips, which was the starting stack. Won some medium-sized pots, but I also lost a few. And in this hand, I start with 1,700 in my stack. Let's just get into this hand. Under the gun opens for 2. And then the cutoff calls, and then I'm on the button, so we can certainly see a flop. It's a suited ace, so, we could easily hit something pretty good here. And then also both the blinds call. So the flop is 2-3-7 with 2 hearts. We flop top on a very low board. And we have the big blind lead out for 5 bigs. So just about half pot. And the cutoff calls. Now at this point, I only have 15 in my stack. So I decide I might as well just jam here because, my hand's very strong, but it's really only going to get worse on like most turns. And we can also get called by flush draws that we're ahead of and straight draws. So I jam, and then big blind, he asks the cutoff. He's like, "Are you gonna call?" And I snap at him like, "You can't do that," because obviously not. That's colluding. But anyways, big blind puts in the side call, and the cutoff folds. And big blind shows king 7 offsuit. So very, very fortunate spot for us. We get it in pure, and we end up holding. So we go from 1,700 to 4,500. And now we actually have a nice stack to play with. All right, this next hand, we've lost a bit of our stack, but we still have a decent amount. The blinds have doubled, by the way, so it was 50, 100. Now it's 100, 200. And we open under the gun for 2 bigs. Now, when we have close to 40 bigs, we should probably just be opening to 2.5 or 3. 2 is usually a little bit too small when you have this much behind. But I don't hate it either. And then we have under the gun +1 and the cutoff and big blind all call. So we go 4 ways. The flop is queen jack 2 with 2 spades. And big blind just jams for 4.1 into 8, so just about half pot. So the question is, do we raise or fold here? I think we could certainly keep in worse hands from under the gun and cutoff. And I kind of want to somewhat disguise my hand strike, so I call. And under the gun +1 also calls. But the cutoff then goes all in for 18 bigs. And this is a pretty bad spot because we lose to queen jack especially, but we can also lose to sets. Although I don't really expect cutoff to have anything besides bottom set. But we do have a very strong hand here, and it's definitely possible that cutoff has a worse hand than us. And then another thing was that under the gun +1 had even more than this behind. So my thinking is if I jam here, and I get called by under the gun +1, even if I'm behind cutoff, I can potentially win under the gun +1's money and win the side pot there. So I end up jamming. I do cover under the gun +1, so I have a little bit behind, even if I get completely scooped here. But I'll basically have just crumbs behind if I do get scooped. And under the gun +1 calls. So the hands here are pretty interesting. Cutoff did end up having queen jack offsuit. And then big blind, very unfortunately, has 5-3 spades. So essentially drawing dead. And then under the gun +1 has ace-4. So everyone's got some equity, but I do have more equity than under the gun +1 on the side pot at the very least. And you'll see the side pots on the turn, but the turn is actually the ace of clubs. So we all of a sudden pull ahead. And we just really need to fade a spade, otherwise we lose. And then the river's a jack. So we get rivered by queen jack, who has a full house now. We do still end up winning the side pot here. So I only end up winning the 36.3 big blind pot, but the cutoff wins the 42 and the 25 big blind side pot. So, I start with about 38 and I have 36 by the end, so I'm not too mad about it, especially when I got it in bad. It would have been really nice to scoop the pot. One of the players said, whoever wins this pot's going to win the tournament. So we'll see where it goes from here. This next hand, I have ace-5 offsuit on the small blind, and the blinds are 250, 500. So the question is, do I open here or do I limp? And I think that we're short enough that limping's fine. I can just see a flop and maybe just proceed from there. So I end up limping, and then big blind shoves for about 10 bigs. And I look at my hand and I think, is this a hand that's worth 10 big blinds? And I end up deciding I think it is. Another thing is, I knew the big blind could be doing this with a pretty wide range of hands, so we could definitely be ahead. And even if we're not ahead, we're still getting decent odds. Something I didn't mention is there's a big blind ante, so it's 250, 500, but the big blind also has to put in an additional 500 on top of that. But anyways, it's 9 bigs to call, and I end up calling, and big blind has ace king of spades. So we're in pretty rough shape here. Really just hoping to hit a 5, and that's about it. We can hit straights and maybe a flush, but you know, flop looks not too bad for us. We have backdoor straight draws, we have backdoor clubs, and then the turn's a 7, so all of a sudden we're open-ended. And then we have the exact same equity we did pre-flop, so we're hoping for an 8, a 5, or a 3. And wouldn't you know it, river of 5, so pretty bad beat for the big blind. I don't know if I should have called here. I think it was maybe fine, especially when I had a lot more behind. So even if I lose, I'm not really out of it. But yeah, very nice result. Next hand, we've got ace-king offsuit on the big blind. For some reason, it won't let me hide small blind's hand. But anyways, he's got pocket nines. Jams into me. Very, very easy call, obviously. And we're actually behind, as you can see, in equity here. We go to a flop. Not looking good until we turn the king of hearts. And no 9 on the river. I have another pre-flop all-in where small blind jams about 8 bigs with king deuce suited. And I've got pocket threes. So it's a pretty easy call. We expect to have around 50% equity against most hands. So unless he's got a pair, we're in pretty good shape. And we call. And then this is the flop. It's the 4 on the window. 7's the second flop card. And yeah, we're basically dead. We have 1 out here because we can't even hit the 3 of spades. So a small blind ends up getting a double up off of us. So blinds are now 500, 1K, and we have a min raise from the button here. So I just go all in with ace queen offsuit, and then it's on button, and he asks how much I have. And I thought I had about 8K in my stack. It was around there only a few hands before, but I'd won a pretty decent sized pot right before this, so I ended up having 1200 in my stack, and before I'm able to count it all, button ends up calling. And he has ace-9 offsuit, so we're in very good shape against his hand. Flop is ace-high. Turns an 8 of diamonds. My heart kind of drops for a second because I thought it was a 9, but we end up holding, and I felt pretty bad about that one because I definitely undersold how big my stack was. But we end up doubling up off a button here, and he only has like 2,000 or 3,000 left in the stack after that hand. A few hands later, we're on the big blind, and small blind jams into us. And we look down at aces. So, yeah, I don't know if there's been an easier decision in all of poker. We call. And just flop him dead. 3 kings on the flop. So yeah, if 88% was too little before the flop, we end up making it 100% by the flop. For this hand, it's heads up versus big blind, who is actually the person who flopped top 2 pair with the queen jack when we had ace queen. So the prediction that whoever won that hand was going to win the tournament was pretty accurate because the winner of the main pot and the side pot ended up being top 2. But anyways, we have ace 4 off. So big blind's only got 5 bigs in his stack, so I just jam and he calls off, and he has queen 9 offsuit. So pretty close in equities, but we're still definitely a favorite. And then just look at this flop. That's twice in a row where I go all in with a player at risk and I just flop him completely dead. Just a very insane run that I had. Probably the hottest I've ever ran in a tournament. So it's too bad that it was only a $10 buy-in, but hey, I can't complain. So we made a nice $92 off of that. But anyways, I'm pretty happy with how I played. I mean, it's pretty easy to play well when you're getting just the best possible hands and just flopping your opponent's dead. Hope you guys enjoyed this first tournament that I went over, and hopefully there's more to come.